Have you also noticed, in recent years, that when a good game is released, in order to be fully appreciated, it requires a certain level of skill. Hence, many debates arise online. Is it a game made for a casual player? Is it too hard? Is it accessible to a wider audience? At first glance, it may seem like a bit of a false debate. It's actually a way to create a barrier between video game consumers and a kind of elite. Unlike other forms of art, this elite is known for being more capable of appreciating the challenges within game mechanics. Some might immediately think of hardcore gamers or the tryhards, but it goes well beyond that. If we go back a few decades, video games were born on computers, not exactly the kind we know today. These were more like big calculators with much greater capabilities. After a few years, they took steps to be commercialized and became popular through arcade machines. And as you know, to make money with an arcade machine, players had to regularly insert coins or tokens. So the challenge had to be difficult enough to make you pay again and again, either to see the end of the story or even just to have the honor of having your name and score on their leaderboard. So, in the art form that is video games, there's always been this competitive aspect. And as a result, video games, up until the 70s or 80s, found their elite through the skills you have with a controller in hand. And this is still the case when you look at esports or speedrunning leaderboards. The gaming culture is and will remain highly competitive. However, with the proliferation of consoles, video games became accessible to a broader audience. Indeed, you pay for a game once and you expect to get your money's worth. Notions like the beauty of graphics, narrative quality, innovative gameplay, all these elements have been added to the need for challenge as the main quality that game creators deem necessary. What's the situation today, then? I can say it without hesitation. The race for challenge is dead. Game difficulty, except for Souls-like games, is no longer a selling point, and is only sought after by a niche of players, many of whom, we could note, are driven by a certain nostalgia. Now, I see some of you asking, what about esports? Or what about speedrunning? And to that, I'll tell you, it's not the same thing. Let's take 3 situations as examples. Elden Ring representing the race for challenge, Rocket League for esports, and Pokémon Diamant for speedrunning. Elden Ring is a single-player game. That to be completed fully requires training, a certain level of strategy, but most importantly, a deep understanding of the game and its mechanics. Technically, you need the same skills if you want to become a pro in Rocket League or set a speedrun record in Pokémon. However, the profile of a typical Elden Ring player, a speedrunner, and a pro gamer is fundamentally different. Why? Because the difficulty doesn't have the same essence, nor the same public. In Elden Ring, it's in overcoming a boss, a challenge planned by its developers. In Rocket League, on the other hand, the developers had an idea for a gameplay mechanic and allowed the players to create difficulty by competing with each other in real time. As for a Pokémon speedrun, you could almost say it's a way to play the game in a way that the developers didn't originally intend. In this case, it's the community that adds rules to a game that's designed to be accessible to a simple child, and raises its difficulty to create a challenge. So yes, I can tell you that the challenge is dead, at least for developers. Except for a certain niche, video games are no longer mainly focused on being challenging. And the fact that games seek to be easily accessible to a broad audience is not a problem in itself. But over the years, with franchises like Assassin's Creed or Far Cry, we see a form of excessive hand-holding. As if it's now risky to ask players to put in some effort. When you look at minimaps that have turned into a treasure trove of collectible with built-in GPS, or when, in a game like God of War Ragnarök, you can take a step without the solution to a puzzle being handed to you. More and more, I feel like I'm just going through the games, that they're somehow being played without me. And this formula has become so standardized that when a game like Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate 3 is released, the question that circulates among the circle of the mainstream gaming community is, are you capable of playing it? I'm not denying the difficulty of these games, or their demands. My point is that by serving up mediocrity every day at the table, it shouldn't come as a surprise that when you finally present a fine vintage one evening, most of the guests aren't able to appreciate it. We don't appreciate good games by playing bad ones, and we don't refine our taste by consuming fast food video games. The industry isn't doing well, because it's realized that it can keep serving us the same rehashed games, with a few mechanics added, slightly improved graphics, and a new story. We'll eat up that soup, even though it's been sitting in the freezer for 3 months. I mean, the first time it's fine. The second and third time, maybe. But at some point, I have to say that your soup is gonna make me sick. And this AAA industry that knows less and less about how to innovate, except for a few rare examples, is far from going under. Just look at the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. You'll see that Call of Duty is far from stopping its sales, or just how many seasons Fornite has, to know that the servers still have a long life ahead of them. Now, this fast food gaming, filled with franchises that no longer know how to innovate, and a plethora of remakes or remasters, isn't necessarily a problem. I'm sure some of you had a blast replaying the latest Resident Evil remakes. Others are getting hyped for the upcoming release of Assassin's Creed Mirage. And I repeat, this isn't a problem. The fact that franchises persist over time and don't require as many resources as creating or imagining something entirely new on paper seems positive. In fact, all the licenses or tried formulas are a good way for a studio to generate enough revenue to invest in new titles, while pleasing the nostalgic part of its audience. The problem arises when this big studio become risk-averse, focusing solely on profits and forgetting about their players. At the end, when a game like Elden Ring comes out, we spend more time discussing its accessibility, more than its qualities, even in the press. If you want to counter this Elden Ring effect, try as much as possible to spend your time on good games, and limit fast food gaming. When you talk to someone about a good game, don't immediately mention how it's hard. Don't waste your time debating difficulty. Focus more on what makes the game unique, beautiful, and the sensation it evoked when you discovered it. Share your love for video games. Be curious, and stop being afraid. If Elden Ring was a banger for you, the best game of its year, or even the decade. If you feel that the video game industry is not at its best in terms of what it can offer, and if you're tired of being held by the hand, or serve the same recipes over and over again, I have no better advice than this. Keep playing video games. Discover new ones. Explore the world of indie games. Or maybe even revisit some good old retro titles. You know what else you can do? Subscribe to my channel and watch my chronic videos. Maybe a gem is waiting for you there. And yes, I'm not ashamed to promote myself like this. Anyway, regardless of the platform, whether it's forums, e-markets, or conversation with friends, be curious, and you'll learn to appreciate harder video games that have something to say. And why not leave a comment? Share with us a recent or older game for its game feel. Tell us why it's a quality game, why you love it so much. That way, as people leave the video and read the comments, some will leave with this certain curiosity I was talking about. To wrap this up, thank you for watching the video until the end. Don't hesitate to share your thoughts on the subject in the comments or leave a thumbs up to encourage me in this work. Subscribe and see you soon.